Are you an adventurer looking to take your hunt to the next level? Then you're in the right place. Welcome to East Meets West Hunt with your host, Beau Martonik.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Mountain Buck Monday series of the East Meets West Hunt podcast presented by Spartan Forge. On today's episode, I have another one of my own stories to share here from heading up to New York. So I'm going to do a complete hunt breakdown of this big woods mountain buck hunt up in New York. First time there, and the hunt was quick, but packed full of learning lessons that I think could help some of you if you're tackling a new state for the first time. The podcast is brought to you by Spartan Forge, and the Spartan Forge app utilizes years of military background machine learning to predict deer movement, including GPS data, 30 years of weather, some academic and state research. So all of those things, it's not driven by anyone's opinion. It's driven by straight data. And the beta app is released now. The full version, it should be out this week, bearing that there's no issues with it, but should go out this week. I'm excited for everyone to get to check it out. A lot of questions on it, but been using it quite a bit, and the GPS mapping on it is incredible. So once this comes out here, hopefully this week, use that code eastmeetswest to save 25% off of the Spartan Forge app at spartanforge.ai. Tethered is a company founded on the principles of educating the hunting community on saddle hunting while creating the most innovative, lightweight, safe products for saddle hunting. I'm currently using the Phantom saddle system with the Predator platform on all my mobile hunts, as well as been playing around with the One Sticks as well. So the whole package there, and actually getting my dad into messing around with the saddle this year too. So it's pretty exciting to get to teach him something that as he's taught me all the things over the years. So check out some of the Tethered products and their information at tetherednation.com. Maven is building the highest quality optics at half the price of their competitors through their direct-to-consumer business model. They want to create the best optics for the job, period. Their products are backed with a lifetime, no-fault warranty and an actual incredible customer experience. What do I mean by that? They're not such a big company that even though they have a lifetime warranty, they actually get back to you right away and are able to help out with that. I'm using the B3 8x30 binos on all my whitetail hunts and the RF1 rangefinder that tags along with me as well. So if you want to check it out, you can use the coupon code eastmeetswest-gift for a free gift with any full price optics order at mavenbuilt.com. GoWild is a free social community built by hunters for hunters. Join me on GoWild today to get $10 to spend on gear for just setting up your account. And you'll keep unlocking GoWild rewards, and you can get more gear with those rewards. You can now see my gear setups over at my profile, which is just under my name, on the GoWild app. And use the code eastmeetswest to save 10% off of all hunting gear on the website. And by the way, Brad just released an article over there on GoWild talking about what I had him on the podcast a few weeks ago about how big tech is trying to kind of attack the hunting industry here. I think it's really worth the read and kind of an eye opener when you see it all on paper. So recommend checking that out once you download the app. All right. So, yeah, this week's Mountain Buck Monday story, I'm going to dive into New York. So, as you may or may not know, that I killed my Pennsylvania archery buck the opening day, October 2nd. And since then, I haven't been able to get out and hunt of any sort. Been working on the house and doing a bunch of other things, some chores. But in the meantime, I did buy my New York hunting license. I've never been to New York before. I've always wanted to hunt it. I don't know why I haven't hunted it. It's, just the state borders Pennsylvania, so it's not that far for me to get to, but I was really excited about it. I looked at the state, and I found a few different public pieces that were what I wanted, and for an experience. I wanted big woods. I wanted, some sort of mountainous terrain, which is no surprise to anybody listening to this. That's what I like to hunt. And I want to experience more states like that. So New York was the next viable option there that I could hunt on the weekends and not need to use any vacation time up to try that out. And I'd never scouted it before in person other than online, just looking on Spartan Forge and finding areas. I marked a whole bunch of waypoints in the last 2 weeks, just trying to areas I wanted to look at. But in general, I looked at this hunt differently than I did like my Pennsylvania hunt. So in Pennsylvania, I'm typically hunting areas, few years, and I'm putting together a plan and running trail cameras, and I'm trying to hunt the oldest bucks in the area. And that's just what I like to do. It's my goal because I have the time to do it. I have the drive to want to do that. But that's not how I look at every hunt. I look at everyone differently, and I looked at New York as one of those places that I just literally wanted to go into a new area, try to pick it apart, and just hunt deer. I just wanted to hunt bucks. I wanted to shoot whatever made me happy. I really didn't know going into it. I didn't know if I was going to pass anything up. I didn't know if I was going to shoot the first antlered deer that I saw. I really had no expectations there, and that made it really fun. So that was kind of my outlook on it. And I'd marked a bunch of places, and the types of areas I was marking so we're coming in towards the end of October, so I was looking at more pre-rut type locations. And the area I was looking at didn't have much for vegetation changes, other than I could tell from looking at the map that there was definitely some hemlocks and mixed with big timber, but there wasn't any logging cuts, anything like that would change it. But so I was kind of assuming there that from talking to other people that have been in the area before, that there's oak trees and acorns and that sort of thing. So I was more so focusing on terrain funnels more than anything. I was marking your typical saddles. I was marking some different benches and draws. So the top of draws were it's a really steep place. So where it would get steep and kind of flatten off a little bit. I was marking those areas and just trying to find clusters of spots to go in and hike. And I was planning on just spending the whole weekend up there, just walking around and carrying my saddle and sticks. And if I found something that I wanted to hunt, that I would climb up a tree and hunt it. But the first thing I do when I get to a new area like this is I drove up Saturday morning and I drive around and just check out the unit or the area or the piece of public that I was on, and wanted to see how the road system's laid out, how things actually looked in person versus what they look like on the map, what access looked like, what the hunting pressure looked like. So I spent 2 hours just driving around, not in a hurry, just seeing what it looked like. And I ended up going to an area that I didn't even have marked up very much. I had a couple spots marked, but I found some apple trees along the road. And so along this dirt road, there was some apple trees, and there was a ton of them, but there was a couple of them that had apples on it. So I pulled over and went and walked underneath them and checked it out. And there was deer tracks there and a bunch of trails coming off the hill. So because those apple trees were next to the road, it was obvious that even the area where I was parking at was highly trafficked by hunters, most likely. So I figured they were coming off of the hills, and there was a lot of topography. There's some good points, and it was an eastern facing slope, and we had a southwest and westerly winds on Saturday. So I was like, okay, they could be bedding out on those points. So what is my plan of attack with it? So I grabbed my bow. I took my Sika Mountain Hauler 4000 pack, because I figured if I shot something, I was going to pack it out. I put my sticks and my platform, and I actually brought 4 trail cameras with me. I don't know why. I kind of had it in my head that I wanted to hunt this way, but I figured maybe, years I'd use this data for, next year and stuff. But anyways, it was more or less just weight in my pack at that point. And I started hiking up the hill, and knowing that it was already, 10 o'clock in the morning by this point, and the thermals are going up the hill. So the best way that I was not going to spook anything by going from the bottom going up was to run the valley, or run like the bowl-shaped area that was in between it, and run those drainages up rather than going up a point where the bucks could be bedded on. So I worked my way up through there, and as I was starting to work up the hill, I had found some sign. There was a bunch of little testosterone-driven scrapes, no big community scrapes, but testosterone-driven scrapes down lower near those apple trees and stuff. And I was working about halfway up, I started seeing some trails that were crossing, so going like horizontal, perpendicular with the hill. And so I marked some of those trails, and I just kept working my way up, and I was heading towards this saddle that I wanted to check out. Eventually got up there and started seeing some rubs. First time I was seeing some rubs and such, and that saddle looked great, like all of them do. And like a lot of them do on public land, there was a ladder stand there, which I give the person credit that they took a ladder stand all the way up there, because it was like 500 foot of elevation gain from the bottom to the top, and pretty steep. So they got that up there, and there's a bow hanger there and a lifeline. So I was like, all right, it's definitely an archery spot. And about 20 feet away from that was a ground blind that someone made out of sticks, and there was a bucket sitting there and everything. I don't know, maybe that was their rifle spot, and the tree stand was the archery spot. I don't know. But there was good buck sign running around that elevation line. So I just stayed on that and just kept working my way through. And it was just like a slight bench at this point, where it was pretty steep on both sides. And I was finding sign, but I wasn't finding any. There was a lot of old acorn caps and rotten acorns on the ground. But I wasn't finding anything fresh for food. So my purpose for going to the top was, typically I find a lot of the sign to be on the top. So whether I'm going to hunt up there or not usually depends on the hunting pressure. But they lay down a lot of signs. That would at least tell me I was in the right place, where there were deer, where there were bucks at. And so I kept working along that line, and I came out towards this point, and then I found a climber tree stand, and then a four-wheeler trail that ran up to it, which there was not allowed ATVs on this piece of ground. So I was like, all right, this gets a little more hunting pressure than I'd like. I'm probably going to try to look for a different area. But as I was thinking about it, I was like, all right, well, there's deer sign here. There's always going to be, whether it's mature deer or just deer in general or bucks in here, the sign's there, they're here somewhere. And they're obviously not up as high because of all this pressure that's coming in from the top. So I'm going to start working these bench systems down a little bit lower and working across. I had uphill thermals, so the way I worked my way down, I always had the wind in my face. I was working along, still not finding any fresh food, and I spotted movement down on this little bench, and I the deer saw me first and was kind of staring, but I was just creeping along, and it was quiet because it had been raining and everything, which was perfect for walking around. And I just stayed still, had my bow kind of in front of my face, and I waited. It was like 10 minutes, or at least that's what it felt like, before the deer went back to feeding. And I was like, all right, pulled up my binos, and I looked, and I'm like, all right, he's a small 7-point. I'm like, all right, well, if I can close the distance within 40 yards, I think I'm going to try to shoot this buck. So my strategy was, the wind was good. I had to keep trees in between me and his head as I was sneaking in. So I literally just went straight at him, but just using the trees to block my movement as I went down. And I'd cover ground relatively quick because the leaves were quiet, so I was able to get down through there until I got about 65, 70 yards out. Then I was really creeping along because he's starting to move, sideways on his bench, just feeding. So obviously there was some fresh, what I found later was acorns and beech nuts, both in this location. So I found an area that was producing this year while that deer was there. I think he was bedded right there and was just getting up to feed, because it was like a little before 3 in the afternoon. So it's pretty early for feeding to be going on. But I got to that. I ended up closing the distance to 55 yards, and I didn't think I could get any closer to him just because it was all open kind of below me there. And he was going back and forth, and he caught my movement as I tried to take my backpack off, and I just froze again. And he's looking my way, but he couldn't tell what I was, and it was a young buck, so maybe an older one, I might not have been able to get away with that, but nonetheless, I just waited, and I just read his body language until he was, kind of starting to feed again. And once I put my pack down, I was like, all right, he's kind of feeding slightly away from me. I need to make something happen to get an opportunity. So I took my boots and I scraped up the leaves. I was behind a big oak tree, so I kept my body concealed. Scraped the leaves, and I made a couple grunts. And I could just see the buck's rear end, and I could see his tail start to wag side to side. I'm like, all right, he's calm. And he turns and he starts kind of working his way towards me. So at that point, I start ranging trees. So and ranging logs and trying to just get an idea in case where he steps out. And I ranged this one log that he was heading towards, and it was 38 yards. It was right on 38 yards. And he comes out right next to it, and because he was there and he was calm, I ended up just ranging him to make sure, and it was like 38 and a half yards. So at that point, I waited till his head was down, and I drew my bow back and settled the pin on him. He was calm. I didn't have to make any noises. Everything was perfect from that side of things. And I let an arrow go, and I watched it go right behind his shoulder, and he took off down over the hill. He went about 30 or 40 yards and piled up. And I went running down behind him, and he was still breathing a little bit. He was definitely, going to expire, but I have always been taught to keep putting arrows in them if you can, just to end it quicker and put them out of their misery. So that's what I did, and I put another arrow in him. Another one, he was kind of quartering away at that point, and went through both lungs and out his opposite shoulder, front shoulder, and then he died basically immediately after that second one. It was pretty incredible, because as I walked up to him, and I just couldn't believe that it happened. I was literally in the woods for 4.5 hours and was able to arrow a buck. And like I said, he was a young, small 7-point, actually my smallest archery buck that I've shot. And it really didn't matter to me, because my expectations going into that was just to go in and find a buck and kill him and be able to get meat. If you listen to the last podcast, I had that scenario with my Pennsylvania deer, and also build that confidence back up that I needed with my shot process and everything else. I've been practicing nonstop since that opportunity I had before, and just felt really, really good about it. It was awesome. It was like a light rain coming down. I'm sitting there on the side of this mountain by myself and just kind of taking it all in. So I took a few pictures there, and then I broke them down and I quartered them, everything there. I got all the hindquarters, front shoulders, neck meat, back straps, tenderloins, got all that stuff out, put it in my game bags, and started to load him up. So I put him in my pack. I ended up loading the entire deer into my mountain hauler with all my other gear, which wouldn't really recommend, but I was like, like I said, he wasn't a huge deer, so that helped. It wasn't like I was doing anything crazy, but the Packout was mostly, it was all downhill. It was side hill and downwards to get back towards my truck. I think it was right around a mile, a little less maybe, to get back towards the truck. So I loaded them all up, but it was heavy. Don't get me wrong. Like, I'd go over a log and I'd shift my weight, and I thought I was going to fall over. So I was going down, and I just kept working my way back down. It was real thick beach brush and everything. and got back to my truck just before dark and was able to get all the meat out, get it in the cooler, and load everything up. I had to change of clothes there because I was covered in blood. If anybody's ever tried to quarter a deer by themselves, it's a mess. You're trying to hold up the legs and do everything and try to keep the meat off the ground, and it was quite the experience to put it lightly. But everything about that hunt was some of the takeaways that I had from it is just like when you go into a new area. For me, I want to cover all my bases. So it's easy to get discouraged if you're not seeing sign, you're not seeing deer. But honestly, until you cover all the different topography layers of the mountain, you don't know what's there. You look at a map and it doesn't look that big, and you think that by covering the top and you cover the bottom that you have it all, but you don't. There's so many different layers and hidden benches that you don't see on the topography lines within it. And you just got to work them down through. It doesn't matter what you hear on my podcast or anything else. Every area is a little bit different. And, bucks don't always bed towards the top or the upper 1/3. Or it's all dependent on food. It's all dependent on hunting pressure in the area. And you just got to kind of adapt to it and figure it out. Again, my process was I was hunting, almost pre-rut. That's what I was looking at that time frame. So I wanted to find does, and to find does, I needed to find food. And without any, without a ton of browse, like logging cuts or anything, I knew mass crop was going to be the ticket if I could find it. And those apple trees in the bottom were, they might have been that food source they hit at 10 o'clock at night, but it wasn't what they were going to hit in daylight. So I just kept looking, and that's where that deer was. And the only spot that out of that entire hillside and couple valleys and ridges that I ran there that I could find acorns and beech nuts. I mean, there might have been other spots, but as far as what I found, that was it. And that's where the buck was. So for me, it was a pretty cool experience to go to a different state and be able to get that done, get some meat in the freezer, and be able to come back home with it. So what I did not know when I bought my tag was I actually have New York, when you buy that out-of-state tag, you get an archery either sex tag, and then you get a rifle buck tag. So I can go back up in rifle season and hunt again. So that's what I'm planning on doing. But yeah, it was a really cool hunt. It's fun if you're used to. I talk a lot about hunting new areas, but if you're used to hunting your same spot all the time, nothing wrong with that. But it is really fun to go into a new area without much expectations and just hunt and read the sign of what's presented. Hunt, I typically hunt from a tree a lot, but this situation had me scouting / hunting from the ground, and to slip in and pull some Western hunting skills out of it and spot and stalk them like that. I don't know. I was just so excited. I was grinning from ear to ear the whole drive home, thinking about that hunt. So anyways, I hope everyone else is having a good start to your season there. I definitely have a horseshoe up my ass so far this year with only 2 days spent hunting and 2 bucks on the ground. So I'm very thankful for that. But it just goes to show that putting in the time scouting from the first hunt and then this one just kind of reading the sign and what it was showing to me, and it ended up working out in my favor. So lastly, I just wanted to mention, if you want to see a photo of this deer, you can head over to my Instagram. It's just under my name, Beau Martonik, at beau.martonik on Instagram, or you can find Beau Martonik on Facebook. You can check that out. And I did film this hunt as I did my Pennsylvania hunt. I did not film the shot, but I filmed the whole experience that I will have on YouTube at some point. So head over there and subscribe to my channel, which is just under my name, Beau Martonik. Again, hope everyone has a good rest of your season, and we will talk to you soon.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of East Meets West Hunt with your host, Beau Martonik. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit eastmeetswesthunt.com, Facebook at East Meets West Outdoors, and Instagram at East Meets West Hunt. If you enjoyed today's episode, please review and subscribe, and we'll catch you next time.